Morning, Clerk. Melika, Clerk.
Choden.
Good morning, Member Kleigo. Shall Member Mitchell go next?
Goeiemôre voorsitter, Dylan Mitchell.
Goeiemôre. Okay, shall we move on to our guests? Welcome Premier Alan Winde, Minister Shana Fernandez, as well as the Provincial DG. May I ask you to introduce yourselves as well? And then we'll ask our guests from the Department of the Premier to introduce themselves. And then we'll move on to the Department of Social Development and then our Commissioner.
Hello, Chair. Good morning. Good to be with you. Alan Winde, Premier.
Thank you, Premier. Welcome. Member Fernandez.
Good morning, Chairperson, Honourable Members, Premier, and to the Commissioner. Welcome. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Bosman, and also to Premier, the Minister, and also the Children Commissioner and all the members. Harry Melina, I'm the Director General in the province.
Thank you, Mr. Malila. Shall we go on to Amara?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. I'm Amara Martinez. I'm in the Policy and Strategy Unit in the Department of the Premier.
Is there anybody else from the Department of the Premier on the line?
Honourable Gideon, HOD Dr. Robert MacDonald is in the meeting as well.
Morning, Mr. MacDonald. Welcome. Can you introduce yourself as well?
Morning, Chair. Robert MacDonald, Head of Social Development.
Shall I now ask our other guests to introduce themselves?
Chair, this is Romeo Marsop, Legal Advisor for the Provincial Parliament.
Welcome, Mr. Marsdorp.
Morning, Chair. Ben Daza, Senior Procedural Officer, Provincial Parliament.
Christina.
Okay, and now we also joined for the first time, and it would have been nice to do this meeting in person, but the precautions around the COVID virus has kept us all behind our computer screens. I'd now like to give over to the new Western Cape, or the first Western Cape Commissioner for Children, to introduce herself. Ms. Nomdo.
Good morning, members, Premier, heads of department, DG, staff of the Western Cape Government. It's a privilege for me to be here this morning, and thank you for this very frontier position that you've put me in. I was going to go blind like everybody else because you have an unfair advantage. You know each other well. I'm the unfamiliar face, so it would be nice to see all your faces as well.
We'll break the protocol rule, and I'll give members permission today. Members, when you do speak, if you could please put your screen on when you speak as well. That would be helpful. This meeting is also being broadcast live on YouTube, so the visuals will help. Members, just up front, we've noted one apology from Member Baku Force. I also note that the Minister of Social Development, as well as the HOD, Dr. MacDonald, has to leave in 45 minutes to attend to a cabinet obligation. I suspect the DG and the Premier also has to leave to chair those obligations. So please feel free to exit the meeting when you need to. Members, on our agenda today is an introduction of the Commissioner for Children, as well as a presentation by the Department of the Premier. With your permission, I'm going to start off by the introduction by the Commissioner for Children. So what we'll do is we'll ask the Commissioner to do opening remarks. Morning and welcome, Member Dugmore. Wasima and Nomonde, do we have any other apologies besides Member Baku Baku Force?
Nothing
No,
from my
Chairperson.
side.
Nothing from my side.
Good morning, Chair. Member Brunk is here.
Good morning and welcome to Member Brunkhuis as well as Member Cameron Dugmore. So members, if there are no other issues, I'm now going to hand over to the Commissioner for Children to do introductory remarks and introduce herself, and then we'll move on to the presentation from the Department of the Premier.
Well, I think that I'm not a long-winded person. I tend to be straight to the point and focused on work. So the way we've organized ourselves a little bit is that Amara and I will split the presentation, and if I may, perhaps just start my presentation after Amara's done her background input.
That's no problem. We like hearing from Amara. So Amara, I'll hand over to you.
Sure, thanks Chairperson, and good morning to all the members and everybody else on the call. So I'll be taking you through, as Ms. Nomdo says, the current status and also just a little bit of background. Next slide, please. So just to give everybody a context, and maybe some of the members haven't been involved since the very beginning, but this appointment of the Western Cape Commissioner for Children has been quite significant for us. It stems from and we take our guiding principle from the Constitution, really looking at Section 78 to 80 of the Western Cape Provincial Constitution, which really provides for the establishment and principles governing the Commissioner, also the powers and the duties, which I'll get into just a little bit later in the next slide, and then also for the appointment and removal of the Children's Commissioner. What is significant, and as the Chair alluded to, was that this act is the first of its kind in South Africa and also the very first at a provincial level. So it is something that we are very, very proud of, to finally say that we have the first Children's Commissioner in the country as well as in the province. The act is very significant because it also provides functional independence to the Children's Commissioner, while also assisting the Western Cape government. And so that is important because it is meant to be an assisting role of the Commissioner to the Western Cape government to perform its powers and functions, while also protecting the rights, needs and interests of children in the province. Next slide, please. So just to delve a bit deeper into Section 79, which is really looking at the powers and the duties of the Commissioner, which is also quite significant for this conversation. So really it's about being able to monitor, investigate, research, educate, lobby, advise, and report on matters that are pertaining to all children in the province. The Commissioner must report annually to the Provincial Parliament on the measures taken to really protect the rights, needs, and interests of children, and also at any other time as the Provincial Parliament may deem fit. Next slide, please. So just in terms of a very operational status update on the Office of the Commissioner for Children, we've secured temporary premises at the Norton Rose House, and that you would know is in Riebeek Street on the second floor. The budget for the Commissioner is located in Program 2 of the Department of the Premier in the Strategic Programs branch. And there has been some preliminary work done to approve the structures for the Commissioner's staff. The Commissioner will also take direct responsibility for recruiting her own staff. And so this was really a decision taken that when she comes in or the person comes in, that they would be fully responsible for choosing who is in her staff complement. We've provided extensive onboarding support to the Commissioner even before she officially started. And this has taken the shape of both admin support as well as content support and handover. And an example of this is really looking at introductions to key role players in the 4 departments. And I know that Ms. Nomdo has already met with the Department of Education, and there have been introductions made to social development, and the same will be done for health and cultural affairs and sport. So that is my section done. Thank you very much. I now hand over to the Commissioner for Children.
Thank you, Amara. Firstly, I would like to congratulate the Parliament of Western Cape for an outstanding achievement, which has the world looking at us, because we have established an Office of the Children's Commissioner, which is quite rare in developing world contexts. And so we have the support of the world, but we also have the eyes of the world on us to see how we manage this position, but this office, and give effect to the rights of children. So firstly, my congratulations to Parliament for the wonderful law passed. My gratitude to the Premier and his staff for the wonderful onboarding process. I've really felt welcome from before the word go. They've assisted me maybe from mid-May already to feel comfortable in the system. And so, the DG and I have had wonderful engagements with each other. We are building good relationships in order to, as he puts it, grow the baby together. So I am looking forward to that cooperation. And when I look at the law and the mandate and the powers and duties of the Commissioner, my heart skips a beat, because it's really awesome. The breadth of the powers and responsibilities given to the Commissioner shows the commitment from Western Cape government that they really want to improve the well-being and rights of children, because they've appointed an independent office as an oversight mechanism. And mostly, I would say in my approach, it's a support mechanism. So when I look at all the powers and duties, I've just listed them a little bit there and made succinct comments about them. The monitoring of government service policy and law, the investigation of service complaints, the research of policy and practice and building implementation mechanisms, education, developing and conducting information programs. And I think especially with the public as well, I think this is a new office for the public. This is a new way of looking at government. So I think that the public has also invited me via their many ways and means, via the media, for example, to engage them, to engage the public, and to build informedness amongst our citizenry about the rights of children. Lobbying of Parliament and Council, advising and recommending government, receiving requests for monitoring. My personal favorite, of course, and you'll learn this along the way from me, child participation. And the subpoenas are really in relation to the investigative functions. So I've sat long and hard and thought about how I approach this position. And somebody has already said to me, I've started to speak government speak. I'm talking about the first 100 days. But I think it's an expectation that people have right from the start of when a commissioner commences. You can't be coming in and trying to find your feet and falling over your feet. You've been given the responsibility because you have some kind of experience and professionalism. And I thank the selection committee for that recognition. And so I've decided to put together and present to you, as I've been sharing with others as well, my sort of core values and strategic intent for my first 100 days. The core values are in bold: credibility, holistic, inclusive, listening, and developmental. And you will note the first letters of all those values spell child. So it's a reminder to me and all of us that my position is child-focused. I'm not here to focus on what government maybe feels comfortable with, but I'm here to represent the views and values of the child and their lived experiences in the province.
Ekskuus man, ek gaan nou vir jou terugbel, hoor jy? Ek is nou net hier in 'n virtual meeting. Okay.
Sorry, Chair. Chair, could I just raise a point of order?
Yes, Member Dugmore.
I'm terribly sorry, Commissioner, and DG to interrupt, but you know, there's actually a lot of interest about what the Commissioner is going to say and is busy saying. And I, for instance, now just try to check whether the public can watch this on a live stream. And I might be wrong, but I don't seem to pick it up on the live stream. Could you just establish, Chair, whether this is being live streamed?
The meeting is being live streamed on YouTube as we speak.
Okay, so I think it's my mistake. I apologize for that. Thank you. I'm going to check again. Sure.
Perfect. Commissioner, you may continue.
Okay, so in terms of the first value of credibility, I think that it's important for the Commissioner for Children to be seen as an independent actor and to set up an independent institution to promote and protect the rights of children. I think there's been a lot of debate and discussion running up to the establishment of the office and about the independence of the Commissioner. And so I would say that I will jealously guard that independence, and you can entrust that custodianship to me. So in terms of being holistic, I think because it's the first office of its nature, people don't really understand the role and function clearly. And for example, I may be requested to provide services to a particular child or group of children. And in this case, it's important for me to be well connected into the systems of government so that I am able to make the appropriate referrals so that we see ourselves as working together for the well-being of children. So the Commissioner will make referrals to the appropriate government departments when concerns are raised about children in need of support. I think because it's also the first time, it's it would be presumptuous of me to have laid out plans for my full 5-year term, and I'm just operating as an individual. My orientation of work is very much collaborative and cooperative. And so I invite anybody and everybody in the Western Cape province, be you government, be you civil society, be you a citizen, and especially if you're a child, to have conversations with me to shape the mission of the office. And hopefully by the end of the 100 days, I would have a bit of a clear insight about what people are saying. On a daily basis, I meet people who would like to share with me their expectations of the office. The listening element really connects to child participation. So we will initiate, and in fact, I have already initiated a project which capacitates child government monitors from across the province to be able to reflect on their lived realities and support the Commissioner in my monitoring role of government. So in this, I need all of the help that I can get to reach out to places such as Central Karoo and Garden Route, where I still don't have child representatives. What I'm looking for is really representatives referred to me by maybe children's rights organizations, maybe schools, maybe community organizations, children who are civic-minded and want to support the work of the Office of the Commissioner. So they will act for me as a reference group, as a grounding force. I always say I'm not the voice of children. Children have their own voice. I'm merely the facilitator of having their voices heard in spaces where decision-making happens that affects their lives. And I'm a bridge into government to enable them to communicate with government about how they experience the services and how how they experience their own well-being, what their needs and interests are. And so I think on this point, I just want to extend an invitation also for children to self-nominate to work with the Office of the Commissioner. I've had children who self-nominate and approach me. I also, in this case, I will go into a bit more detail in my next slide about which kind of children I would like to work with, just so that you can have an understanding of that. I think there's still one more point on the previous slide. The developmental orientation is really, as I said, it's important to me that I build an understanding of government systems. It's important to me that I foster productive relationships within government in order to promote a rights approach. I think that you don't bring people over to your side by coming with a heavy-handed orientation. You slowly try to understand where they are and build from where they are to a consensus understanding of what children deserve and what children's rights in effect means. So in this case, I'm looking forward to those productive relationships within departments. The next slide just tells you a little bit of my first week of work, which was basically working with the Office of the Premier staff to try to set me up with IT, communications, and a physical office. I really want to thank Amara, Tuhida, Israfil for their warm welcome and support into government and for making me feel supported right from the start. Israfil was the first person who contacted me on behalf of the department, and he's a wonderful ambassador for welcoming people. So I thank you for that. Connecting with children for back to school experiences. I think that my commencement date also coincided with the opening of schools in the province. And there was a lot of trepidation around this transition period. And for me, I felt it important to profile and highlight children's experiences of that back to school process. Firstly, looking at, for example, the Elsies River High Representative Council of Learners campaign to request the National Minister of Education to restart the year in 2021. And that campaign got a lot of notice. It resonated with many people on Facebook. It was shared 6,500 times, a letter from a matriculant in Elsies River High. And so I've worked with that group of learners to get their voice out, to connect them to radio stations, to connect them to media, so that they can be able to share their concerns about why they're so anxious about going to school and what this really means, especially for a matriculant who is expected to complete a full year of education under these circumstances. So during that first week, I thought I'd ask them also to tell me how they experienced their first day of school. And Chelsea Botha, the chair of the Representative Council of Learners, avid poet, wrote a poem to me to share her feelings. At the moment, I use my personal Twitter account at Nomdu Christina to share some of my daily insights and experiences in this office. So on that Twitter account, you will find her poem. I also thought, well, you can't only focus on the older bunch, you have to also reach out to children who have gone back in grade 7. And I asked somebody in the community where I grew up in Belhar to write me about their experiences as a grade 7. And Mubin Ghani, he kindly wrote me a letter to tell me what he experienced at the first day of school. I think for me, what has been imperative about my message around going back to school, especially to departments of education and parents and educators, is that we mustn't focus so much on the physical well-being of the children, all the PPE and the sanitizing, and forget about their mental health during this time. They were incredibly anxious and fearful. I was part of a project that reached out to children in lockdown, recorded over 200 children's inputs across the country. They were very anxious, and they also want their anxieties to be addressed. So we must have a comprehensive strategy of onboarding children, transitioning children back into their school, into their schooling. If we indeed feel that this is the best way to go in relation to evidence. So I think that for connecting with children also, I have engaged with some 20 to 30 high school learners who have either been referred to me or have self-nominated, who would like to be able to work with the Office of the Commissioner. We've started to work with each other on a WhatsApp group, and my intention is that they will be trained around children's rights, how government works, how government budgets work, what services, entitlements they have, and also to reflect on their lived reality. And I'm pleased to say that we've reached out to children in Franschhoek, Malmesbury, Stanford, as well as the Metro. And once again, I would like to appeal to members from the constituencies to maybe connect me with other structures in the greater part of the province. I spent yesterday talking to their parents, because it's very important to me that parents are also involved and understand when their children are part of projects, and that parents give full signed consent and children of all ages give assent to projects that they are involved in. And I've also connected with the Nelson Mandela Children's Parliamentarians from the province. And so we have in fact already started our training. I've told them they've already been given the fundamentals of the structures of government, and they've already been given insight into child rights. So we're having fun when you perhaps start to take your dinner break at 9 p.m. at night because you've had a whole day of Zoom meetings. That's when my night shift starts with the teenagers. They are incredibly energetic at that time of night, and often we have conversations until midnight. So that's part of the job that really excites me the most, this direct connection with children and bringing those experiences into my office. The engagement with child rights stakeholders has been going well. I reach out to people, people reach out to me, we schedule meetings, and I really just create the opportunity to listen to people's expectations of what they would like the Office of the Commissioner for Children to achieve in the province. What kind of person should I be? What kind of ambassador should I be? I listen. Sorry, DG?
You may continue, ma'am.
Oh, so I take that feedback and I will build everybody's input into a picture that then gives me some idea of how I can frame the mission of the office for perhaps the first 2 years. And that's the intention there. I had a wonderful meeting with the Department of Basic Education, with the entire leadership structure, and there I must thank the SGs called the head of department, Mr. Schroeder. He was wonderful and inspiring in his leadership, flexible, approachable, personable, encouraged his staff to engage with me freely. I was asked there about the value of play, And I told them that, in fact, the methodologies that I use with building skills with children's monitors, for example, is all about play. It's about creative arts and performing arts and fun and games, treasure hunts. And they also asked me from the previous work that I had done what some of the children's views were about the shortcomings in our education system. And of course, I shared with them that the children shared with me the ubiquitous violence, not only in schools, but in their homes, in their communities. The violence is a daily experience for some children. And if we are to do violence prevention programs, we must attend to it in an ecological manner, you know, by addressing their home environments, their school environments, their community environments. And I found great support for these ideas about listening to what kind of challenges children face from the Department of Basic Education. I'm very hopeful that this will be replicated in all departments, that I'll be able to meet not only the HOD, but the leadership structure, so that I can see how I can access information to be able to do my research, analysis, understanding of the departments. And then, of course, the matter that has taken me by surprise most, I'm sure it's familiar to you, but for me it's very new to be inundated by media. And so I've had to think deliberately and strategically about how I engage media and how I work with media to build public understanding of the Office of the Commissioner. And media have been great and also provided great platforms for me to speak. And I've received many, you know, lots of feedback about things that people hear on the radio. So media is quite an important facet of our society, and the source of maybe a platform for building those information programs that form part of my mandate. I've already, from some media outlets, been asked to do regular slots. And so one will think about this. I think that for me, the office of the Commissioner, the staffing will be very important. Firstly, I need to work with child rights champions. So that will be my first requirement for any job of anybody that will join this office. You must be a child rights champion. Then we will look for technical skills in the management and administration of the office. We will look for technical skills in communications. We will look for technical skills in research, both legal and sociological, because already in my first week in office, I've received an official request for investigation, and it's well understood because it's in relation to children in child and youth care centers, which may have, during the isolation period, been particularly separated from many sources of outside support. And so I've received that official request for investigation, and we'll be discussing it with the HOD McDonald tomorrow in a meeting that we have scheduled. I think that for me also it will be important to get your feedback as members of Parliament about what I've set out to do, the directions that I've chosen. Your insights, your advice, your guidance to me is very valuable in this regard. And so I thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak with you, and I listen intently to your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nomdo. This process started a long time ago, and the one person in this term that's really championed the appointment of the Commissioner has been the Premier. So I'm now going to hand over to the Premier. Premier, if you'd like to make any introductory remarks, and then thereafter to Minister Fernandez just before they have to leave.
Thank you, Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not really going to say too much other than, again, to just really welcome the Commissioner. It is really great to have her and to see the real enthusiasm in the way that she has, jumped in and really tackled this position and brought some really great fresh ideas, and it's really exciting to see. And as you said, Chair, this has been a long time in the coming, and yeah, we look forward to this path forward. And I think for our province, we're proud now to have it in place, and we really welcome her. And I think all of the departments, as well as the whole of society, are going to be engaging with her office, and I really look forward to the years ahead and the difference that she's going to bring. And you can already see it. You can see the energy and the enthusiasm and the innovation and the ideas, and I think that's really great. So, Commissioner, thank you very much as well from my side. From our last meeting to now, I mean, I can already see all of your ideas pouring in, and that's really great to see. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Premier. Minister Fernandez, do you have any remarks that you'd like to make?
Thank you, Chairperson. I would also like to welcome the Commissioner. I did take the liberty of welcoming her on Twitter because I noticed that she has an active Twitter account. So I formally welcomed her on Twitter and in official correspondence. And I want to assure the Commissioner that she will enjoy the full cooperation from the Department of Social Development. We understand, and you've set it out very clearly, what it is that you will be embracing in the next 100 days and possibly your vision and mission for the next 2 years. So be assured of our support and our cooperation. And I look forward to that meeting where you can meet the leadership team of social development so that at least you can put names to faces, someone to wish you well, and at the same time assure you of our cooperation and collaboration. Thank you, Commissioner, and welcome. It is indeed a first, and we're very proud to have you in the position of the Children's Commissioner. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Minister and Premier. Members, we're now going to move over to questions. I'm going to ask members to use the raise your hand function, and I'll then note members. If you don't have the raise your hand function, you're welcome to use the chat site, or if you're on the screen, I should be able to see if you raise your hand as well. Do we have a first bite? I've got member Dugmore. Just seen your hand go up virtually. Anybody after member Dugmore? Okay, while we wait, I'll hand over to you, member Dugmore.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, DG, Commissioner, and other members of staff. I think I would like to join, all those who have welcomed the appointment of the Commissioner, and also, commend the Commissioner for the work that has already been done, and the officials of the Department of Premier, which the Commissioner has referred to, who've not only assisted her so far in setting up the office, but as we know, as members of this committee, have been very involved in the process of drafting the legislation and overseeing the process together with social development in regard to the actual appointment. I think for me, we now need to move ahead. I think there is a history of concern around how long it actually took for this very unique provision of the Western Cape Constitution to actually see the light of day. But I really think that, and what was for me very significant, Chairperson, the process which you led, which eventually came to the legislature, was basically a unanimous decision across party lines in regard to this particular appointment of Christina Numdu, but also a unanimous acceptance of the need for this. And I think that provides a very strong basis for cohesion and unity in terms of how we now move forward. The second thing I want to say is that you know, I think a question that has always emerged when one is working with and together with children is, you know, how does one actually engage in a way that ensures that the children themselves are represented and that their voice is heard? Or some people say, well, how do you actually organize the children's sector? Because clearly there are all the NGOs, there's different departments that have direct interest in issues that affect school children and others, such as the education department, which the commissioner referred to, social development, so on. But the issue is, because I remember, Chair, you would also recall that a number of NGOs actually went to a lot of trouble to try and involve children in the very process of setting up the commissioner and even coming to observe the interviews and so on. And, you know, on the one hand, you might have some of us adults that have a view that, you know, children aren't actually sort of able, you know, to be involved in organizations or structures that represent their voice. And there is always the issue of making sure that children do focus on, say, their obligation to be in school and so on. But what I'm actually getting to is that, you know, the other day I was actually meeting with a group in Heidelberg that were involved in an urban agriculture project, and they've actually got a board that they've set up. I don't know if it's completely legal, but they've got a 6-year-old child that's on the board and a 12-year-old child. This is now, they're doing urban agriculture, but what they do is that the children come, they help with the growing of food, they have reading sessions, they fly kites, and then, but it's all centered around growing food in like a community space near Heidelberg. But what struck me was that this group, and I just forget the name of the NGO, they had a 6-year-old and a 12-year-old actually on the board. Now, immediately I say, my goodness, you know, isn't that like child abuse? Or isn't it exploitation of children? But when I had the privilege of actually meeting the 6-year-old, like the other day, and I came back and they wanted to show me something else. And, you know, it was just astounding, you know, to speak to that 6-year-old child about their interest and why they enjoy being part of this, what they think should happen. So the issue is, for me, the commissioner referred, for instance, to the high school learners, because high school learners, we all know, those of us that were around in the 80s and 90s, like the DG and others who, you know, we won't give up our years here, but they would remember that high school students organized themselves in SRCs, and they were a really strong voice in our schools across the Cape Flats. Now we know that Minister Asmal and others, the late Minister Asmal, you know, when they came up with the Schools Act, referred to these structures now as RCLs, Representative Council of Learners. Now, if one looks at the legislation, there's some incredible responsibilities on the RCL. They have to, they sit on the governing body, they are part of interviews which happen for key staff, they look at the budget, etc., etc. And I recall, Commissioner, when I was MEC for Education, we actually initiated the Western Cape RCLs, where we like had workshops and we like pulled an association together. And I was, you know, some of those young people that were on that structure, even today, you know, I still connect with them informally. And I think that, I think it's going to make the job, it's not about making the job of the commissioner easy. That's not, I don't really mean that. But if, for instance, we had the SRC stroke RCLs, you know, from Khayelitsha or Mitchell's Plain or the George area, then you actually are not only assisting in that voice, but it's a more sustainable way of engagement, because every year the RCLs have to be re-elected, and, you know, you could have a provincial, or, and if those children, you know, young people who are, you know, from 13, 14, 15, because the way the RCL works, you have to have a rep from each grade. So your grade 8 rep is there, your grade 9, 10, 11, 12. And, you know, if we are able to put some energy working with the education department and maybe the youth commission or the NYDA, and really work to rebuild that sector, absolutely in a non-partisan way, but just those learners. And if we invest in the development of that leadership, I think that that would be a huge boost to the Office of the Children's Commissioner, where you would have an organized sector of young people who are, when I drop my daughter at school now, that was why I was a little bit late for this meeting. As I went into the school, there were about 3 learners who were holding up posters, Black Lives Matter. Sometimes I think we underestimate the level of thinking and engagement that is happening. It's like, I don't recall some of us when we were like in grade 8. So we've got an incredibly powerful, potential young people who are exploring. My brother said to me the other day, this lockdown has actually allowed or created a space for people to think. Because, in terms of what's happening all over the world at the moment, I think a lot of people are really thinking anew about many, many ideas. And the youth, I think, are at the center of that. So all I really want to say is that I would really think that building an organized, representative, dynamic RCL association in the province would really be important for tapping into young people's views and hearing their ideas and proposals. You referred, Commissioner, to the letter from the Elsie's River student and so on. And then obviously, the NGO sector is quite vibrant. You've mentioned the departments and so on. But look, I'm sorry I'm going on. I'm just very excited about this. It's been a long time coming. I think we all welcome it. The chair has overseen a credible process which has resulted in an appointment of a very good commissioner. Not that we are trying to flatter you or anything, Commissioner. We're just happy that the office is now open, that you are there. And whatever we can do to support, we will. But thank you so much for the presentation, and thank you to Amara, all the officials at DG, for helping to get us to this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Dagmore. Member Kleho?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Mine is also a comment, Chair. It's not a question per se. Is to welcome the Commissioner, like the Premier has done and the Leader of the Opposition has done. But we also are concerned about the outside areas, such as your Central Karoo and your Garden Route, that the Commissioner made a remark that there is no representation yet as far as they are concerned. So which means therefore that there needs to be a doubling of efforts to ensure that we've got a representation from all over, because it's not only kids around the metros that have got children's challenges. So it would be very much proper that the rural areas do not find themselves not being represented by the Commission and the office itself. And then in terms of the mandate, we think we have a strong view that the Commissioner has got a very strong mandate to deal with. Recently, we are checking on the news whereby there are learners around the metro that were raising issues about issues of racism in their schools and all those kind of things. So you find these kids trying to mobilize themselves and in order to retaliate against that. So our kids do not need to find that kind of expression under a democratic dispensation. We just wish that her desk might be able to her office might be able to take up such kind of concerns that are raised for immediate resolution, so that we don't find our kids on the street with those kind of resistance like it happened in the 1976 eras. So we are looking very much up on the office that it would deliver its mandate. We understand that you might be thanking government for maybe the appointment, in particular the Premier, but just wish you wouldn't be confused about the role played by opposition parties to see to it that we've got a children's commissioner today, because it was not an easy assignment. But we don't want to draw you to political tug of war. Ours is just to welcome you on the office and wish you well in your endeavors.
Thank you very much, Member Kleho. Are there any other questions, members, or comments?
Chair?
Yes, Member Dugmore?
I'm sorry, just a specific question. I just wanted to ask, like, in regard to the actual budget breakdown and staff and the process of appointment, do we have an approved organogram yet in regard to exactly how many staff members and the process of appointing those staff members? That's the one question. And then can I just ask, I noticed that the Office of Norton Rose has been made available. I would just like to ask, I don't know if the DG or the Commissioner can respond, was that a donation of that space, or is there a lease between the Office of the Children's Commissioner and Norton Rose? Or is it just the Norton Rose building? I just want to get clarity on that. Or is it the actual firm of lawyers that are donating space? Thanks.
Okay. I saw another hand. Was that Member Mackenzie? Member Mackenzie, am I seeing your hand?
Yes, happen. Share your.
Yes, Member Mackenzie, you can go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
Share.
Can't see Member Mackenzie. Member Mackenzie, you can go ahead.
Are you?
Member Mackenzie?
Yeah.
You can go ahead. Wasima on the Monday, can we get someone from IT to assist Member Mackenzie? And then Member Windvogel, did you have your hand up as well?
Yes, Chairperson. Can you hear me, Chairperson?
Yes, we can, ma'am. You can go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. I also want to congratulate the Commissioner on her appointment, and I also wish her well on executing duties. Chairperson, mine is just two questions on slide 4. I think the LOO, the leader of opposition, did ask of mention something about the budget. My question on that is, do the Commissioner have all the resources needed for the office to function optimal? Was the Commissioner fully involved in the setting up of the office? And then can you please also tell us more about the structure of staff? What is the number of staff members that office that she have in the office, and is it enough? And is the Commissioner happy with the budget given the amount of work before her? Yeah, that's all from my side. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Windvogel. Member Mackenzie, can you hear us?
Chairperson, I think there's a glitch. I tried calling Member Mackenzie, but we lowered his hand. So, yeah, no, he's not available.
Okay.
Chairperson, could I just make a suggestion that Member Mackenzie sends his questions on a message, or the committee coordinator asks him to WhatsApp the questions and then share it with the committee.
They are doing that. They are contacting him. Okay. Commissioner, I'm not going to hand over to you. So there's a few specific questions and quite a lot of remarks if you want to respond to that. And then members, if you could indicate if there's another round of questions. But I'll hand over to the Commissioner now.
Thank you very much for the warm words of welcome and congratulations. I really appreciate it. I also appreciate that this appointment was unanimous across parties. And so I will never get into party political issues. For me, my mandate is very clear, but I have a listening ear for everyone who has a concern for children. And so I maybe address the more administrative issues. Of course, the budget was set up in my absence in an appropriation bill that preceded my appointment. So I, of course, did not have input into that budget. And the staffing structure is to be presented to me, and we will discuss robustly whether the staff is sufficient to operationalize the activities within the office. I just must say that for future reference around budgets, is that it's not only important to make provision for office, physical infrastructure and humans to support the initiatives, but it's also important to make provision for project budgets. So activity budgets are very important, and I hope to be able to flesh that out soon within this first 100-day period, so that we can have a proper budget request go through for the next year, because I think it's insufficient to just set up an office in a building with people, but the orientation around outreach, especially some member Tejo has noted that one needs to reach out to everybody in the province. And so it is completely my intention to do that. And I will be out and about once the pandemic situation improves. So it's important, I think, that we keep our eye on the budget allocation. This is what I request, that you help me to build a sufficient budget to give effect to the mandate. I note the concerns around, racism in our society. Equality and dignity rights are the cornerstones of our Constitution, and yet they seem to be the hardest rights to claim and enjoy. And this is really an indictment on all of us in society, that we are not working hard enough to bridge those gaps of inequality left by legacies, and that we do not affirm the dignity of every single person in our society. For me, also, we must recognize the dignity of children. Personhood starts at birth, and so the dignity of persons should commence at that stage. Children shouldn't be entitled to less dignity and less equality than other members of the society. And I really will work robustly to build in the children also a resilience to come forward to voice, as they have done in their Instagram. You silence, we amplify. Correct, we are in a society at this stage where especially adolescents are very civic-minded, and they think about global issues very in a very deep way. And so we take our lead from them. When they raise issues, it means the entire society needs to put emphasis and to give credibility to their claims. I wouldn't like to see the adults in the society denounce the claims that children have made about their lived experience, because every lived experience is valid and should be given that affirmation that if your experience is valid, we hear you, we will try to do better by you. So I will work, and I've said this in the selection process, strategically and systematically. So be assured that this is on my agenda to work with, but you may not see sensational things happening in the media. I'm not one for sensation. I'm one for working hard strategically and systematically so that we improve things in the longer term. And so I appreciate Member Kego's concerns here, and I take it seriously to heart. Member Dagmore's comments around children's capabilities is a debate that we struggle with in the child rights sector to make adults in the society understand that children have capabilities that we undermine continuously. Instead, we sometimes draw them into processes as tokens, and we must guard against that, because that really undermines what they can truly bring to a process. And I'm glad you engaged directly with the 6-year-old, had conversations, and were able to be impressed and impacted on by this child expressing themselves so eloquently. I think that civic education, in the way that we will do in children's participation in government, is complementary to schooling. One is educated in very many spaces, and one needs to build in today's world a broad base of education. So civic education is key, I think, for building active citizenry. Wonderful suggestion around the association of RCLs, and one would, it would have been so convenient if there was already access to many RCLs even in this time, but we are living in trying times, and I will make every effort to visit many communities, all communities, by the time that I end my term, so that we don't only work with children who are in institutions of learning. As you will know, in their high school years, there's incredible dropout. And so a message given to me by a child in one of the processes that I engaged in was, don't only work with happy children. One must also listen to the concerns of those where systems have failed them. So to work with children in conflict with the law, to work with children who are victimized because of their sexual orientation, to work with children with disabilities is key to an inclusive approach to this office. Thank you all for your comments and your questions.
Thank you very much. Member Philander.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Through you, Chair, Ms. Nomdu, from my side, also very welcome. We are very happy and excited to have you. And one can really hear the passion that you have for your job. And it was also wonderful to see the enthusiasm of the kids during the lockdown period, where they crafted pictures for the CTICC Hospital of Hope. There is no dull moment, and we are very happy. Ms. Nomdu, during level 3, we see that private ECDs are still closed, but yet unregistered ECDs are currently running within our communities. Now, already with the emphasis on the safety of our children on a daily basis, do your office intend on getting involved in that process, and up to what level and how? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, just a final check. Are there any other members who'd like to ask a question? Perfect. Ms. Nomda, I'll hand over to you for those final remarks.
Thank you, Member Philander. I think that it is concerning that in any circumstance when we place children at risk, and we must always be aware of the risks we place them in. Even under lockdown level 5, children were at enormous risk of being in lockdown with their abusers. And so that concern really came through from children when we had webinars recently, and children spoke about the various levels of the lockdown and what each of those levels, the risks that each of those levels bring. In relation to ECDs, what I have noted from policy levels is that ECDs are still to be closed, and only grade Rs that is under the administration of the Department of Basic Education and not the Department of Social Development. There's some guidance and consideration of how to open that, but ECDs under the auspices of Department of Social Development and the HOD, if he's still here, may give us more information about that. But to my knowledge, they are yet supposed to be closed. But you know, it brings out the concern maybe that at level 3, parents have needed to return to work. Parents have run out of options for care. Parents are entrusting their children to others. And we need to be alert to the situation so that we can provide the best support possible from, I think, here it is government's role. You know, government should attend to the fact that if parents need to go to work, we need to be able to understand what the childcare arrangement is going to be. So planning must be holistic. It cannot just focus on one aspect of a family's well-being. We must see family units and their concerns and their well-being as a whole. I will engage further with the ECD sector. I am connected to them. I will engage further to see what a role could be. But I think primarily the role is around government, and so my support and my advice will be directed to government in this regard. I hope I've covered that. Chair, you'd like me just to say thank you. Maybe I really appreciate this first engagement. I think it was productive. I look forward to future engagements and invite you all to connect with me, to discuss with me your expectations further, if you'd like to do so. Thank you very much for the warm welcome.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nomdo. And it's interesting also to note, although I don't think we have a provincial-wide student representative council of learners, but we do have quite a vibrant and active junior city council in the metro, which comprises of RCL representatives. We also have the Paarl Town Council as well as the George and Knysna Town Councils. So those are useful places to start. It's interesting, Member Dagmo spoke about the provincial RCL. I was actually one of the first members of that provincial RCL executive. And I remember we met at a camp in Worcester, and it was a really useful engagement. And I think for those of us who are in far-flung constituencies, we're definitely going to do our best to promote the work of the Commissioner. And we're going to use the communications channels available to us to engage our constituents and the organizations in our constituencies to make sure that they know that there is an office of the Commissioner. I want to thank all of our guests for joining us. You are welcome to leave now, and Ms. Nomdo, you're also welcome to leave. Members, if we could just stay behind to conclude any resolutions that we have. Thank you everybody for joining us this morning, and hopefully our next engagement with the Commissioner will be a face-to-face engagement once it is safe to have meetings in person. Members, I'm now going to hand over to you again. Are there any resolutions or requests for information that we'd like to note and write to the different departments or to the Commissioner? Member Dagmo, I see your hand. Member Dagmo, we can't hear you.
Sorry, Chair, thank you so much for sharing your experience with the RCLs, provincial RCL. Just shows how old some of us are and how young some of us are. Chair?
Thank you. Yeah, it was quite a while ago.
No, interesting. But Chair, look, I don't know if we should really. Okay, this is a joint committee, is that right? You chairing, but it's a joint committee meeting. I'm not sure where our chairperson is, Member Mackenzie, whether he has resolved his communication problems. So, I mean, just maybe one of the, I see the senior procedural officer, Mr. Ben Daza, is here. Is it normally, or is it a convention that a joint committee would, I suppose there's nothing stopping us from passing a resolution, but maybe they could just advise on that. But I would say that obviously if we could, welcome the presentation, and that, obviously if we can resolve that the particular detail that we asked about in regard to budgets. I noticed that I don't think the commissioner or anyone responded to my question about the Norton Rose issue, like whether it is just a space in Norton Rose, or maybe I missed that, Chair, or whether, the firm of attorneys have actually assisted. So, but I think the committee coordinator took a list of questions. So I think those questions which have not been answered to, we should just request that they be answered. And then the one resolution which I would like to ask us considering would be whether we could, this committee requests the Children's Commissioner to investigate and provide an updated report on the desirability of establishing a Western Cape Association of RCLs, and what the current situation is in regard to the representative councillors' learner structures, training provided by the department. I mean, I'm not sure if we really want to get into that now, but I'm particularly passionate about that issue. And if she sort of spoke to the department, found out what's currently happening in support of RCLs, I know there is some kind of training, and then, actually go back into the reasons why the current WCD or the MEC have not continued what was started then in regard to the Western Cape Association of RCLs. But if people feel we shouldn't really get into resolutions, then can maybe hold that back for the next time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Dagmoya. I agree. I think if we've got any questions, we can note that down. I've jotted down the question of the RCLs, and it's something that we've already discussed in the Education Standing Committee. So I'll follow that up there as well. I know there's a lot of work that's being done around enabling and building capacity amongst young people. Members, are there any other comments before we close?
Chair, can I just ask, was the question answered about the building, the Norton Rose building, or did I miss something? Was it responded to?
It wasn't answered, and we've noted that. We'll ask that, but I suspect the Department of the Premier is just renting office space.
In that building.
It is also the same building where the Chief Inspector for Education is also in. But we'll follow up with them, and we'll ask them when we ask those questions around the budget and the structure, and we'll hopefully get written response, and we'll share that with members.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members, with that, thank you very much for your time. I hope that you all will stay warm, and we look forward to our next engagement. The meeting is then closed.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you.
Thank you.